Hey, welcome back to my channel. So today is going to be a little bit of like a monthly wrap up, more like a bi-monthly wrap up for February and March. I fully intended to do a monthly wrap up at the end of February, but February was not a good month for me as a whole. I was very emotionally unwell. And then the end of February and beginning of March were very busy and stressful, so I just didn't really fully have time to commit to that. And I didn't really have time to film that video, and I didn't really have the drive to film that video either, to be honest. But I am in a much better space now. And it's not like my reading months were really the biggest anyway. In March I read like 9 books, I think, and then in February I read 7 books. Okay, so the very first book that I read in the month of February was My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I don't want to say that this book set the tone for my month, because I have never had an experience similar to what Vanessa goes through in this book. However, this month definitely felt dark and dreary, and this book was that. So literally started this on February 1st, so I maybe should have made a better decision. But anyway, this takes place in 2 separate timelines following our main character, Vanessa, as the title would suggest. So the first timeline is in the year 2000, and she's 15 years old, and you follow her inappropriate relationship with her 42-year-old teacher. And then the other timeline is 2017, when Vanessa is 32, and we follow her as she sort of comes to terms with everything that happened to her. The reason that, like, catalyst that sort of launched her into all of this stuff is a bunch of other girls starting to come out about their experiences with the same teacher, and she sort of has conflicting feelings about it. Now, I gave this book 3 stars. See, here's my problem. I read books to enjoy myself, and I didn't enjoy this book, but I was not supposed to enjoy this book. I feel like it would have been weird if I enjoyed the book. It was written for a purpose, and it served that purpose, and it was very well written. However, I could only give it 3 stars because of the fact that it brought me no enjoyment. Like, it was incredibly well written, and I wanted to know what happened, and I was rooting for Vanessa, obviously, but I don't know how to explain it. I actually had a really interesting experience with this book because I pictured everything playing out as I imagined it, but everything was playing out in black and white, which I have never had that happen before when reading a book, but it happened with this book, so that's really interesting. Not a favorite, but really important. Maybe don't read it if that sounds like something that would be upsetting to you, because it was upsetting to me, and I have no personal biases towards a situation like that, so just heads up. But it was a really great book nonetheless. It was extremely well written, and definitely served a purpose, and it served that purpose well. Okay, next up we have a trilogy that I reread, Shadow and Bone trilogy. Now, I reread these books in preparation for the duology, the Six of Crows duology, because I had never read that one. I read these books maybe 5 years ago, and they were not my favorite. I think that they were all like 3 stars. Now, upon my reread, some of them I enjoyed better than 3 stars. Like Shadow and Bone, for example, I rated 4 stars. Siege and Storm was still 3 stars. It just kind of suffers from middle book syndrome, which a lot of trilogies, the second book in the series is not that great. There are some exceptions to that rule, but it's just a pattern that I've noticed. And then Ruin and Rising was 4 stars. And I enjoyed these books more, and I think that that is because of the fact that I read them from the perspective that, so I read them 5 or 6 years ago, and everybody talked about how much they loved The Darkling. So I went into it expecting The Darkling to be like the best thing ever, and I think I was disappointed when it just was not what I expected. So when rereading them, I went into the books with the knowledge and the expectations that The Darkling, I thought I heard a train or an ice cream truck or something, I don't know. Anyway, I went into reading experience the second time with the understanding that the Darkling is not a love interest. He is a villain, and I think, actually I can't say, because so many people love the Darkling, even despite what he is. They like morally gray characters, even if he's not really morally gray, is he? Anyway, I can't really tell you how you will enjoy the book, but I personally preferred it more rereading it, knowing that the Darkling was not on our side. That's all that I'm going to say. I just realized that I have not even given a description of this book, so I will do so vaguely, mostly the first one. So this follows Alina Starkov, and she is a cartographer for an army regiment. Her regiment is attacked and her best friend suffers a really terrible injury, and she unleashes a power that she didn't know she possessed. Basically, she's a Grisha, which what those are is people born with magical powers, and they're like separated into different categories based on their abilities. And she found out that she's a Grisha, and that is all that I will say, other than the fact that she was whisked away to be trained as a Grisha. Never knew she was a Grisha. She was an orphan, doesn't know who her real parents are, I don't think. I could be wrong. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed these books so much more the second time around. So I'm glad that I chose to reread them rather than just going into the trilogy, or not the trilogy, rather than just going into the duology, because I feel like the duology hit so much harder having like a fresh mindset around how the world works. So that brings me to the duology, the Six of Crows duology. I loved this book. This is my first 5-star fantasy, I guess I can say that. I loved this. This takes place in the same universe as the Grisha trilogy that I just discussed with you. However, in this one we follow 6 sort of societal outcasts. So we've got Kaz, Inej, Wylan, Jasper, Nina, and Matthias. I think I got all 6 of them. And they are given, well, Kaz is given the task of completing this heist for a large sum of money, and he enlists the 5 others that I mentioned to help him on this impossible heist. And that is all that I will say. So if you like heist stories, you will probably love this book. I loved this book. Something interesting about this book is that most books, how many take a shot every time I say the word book? This is a booktube channel, so you'll be absolutely wasted. Anyway, I'm in a weird mood today, I'm sorry. What was I saying? Oh, something interesting about this book is most books, either I really, really love their characters or I really, really love the plot, but this one has both. I know it's crazy that I'm saying that, but I love the plot of this book and I love the characters. I love the found family aspect. If that is one of your favorite tropes, specifically in fantasy, you will love this, because this is some of the best found family that I've ever read. Shadow and Bone has it a little bit too, but this 100% takes the cake with a really intense, groundbreaking plot. So I gave this book 5 stars, and then I read the second one, and the second one I still love. I did not love it quite as much because I don't really know. It got a lot more political. This book was still really political. This one was so much more politics. They were really well done, and it wasn't necessarily boring. It was just less of the found family interactions that I loved about the first book. They were still there, and I was still, obviously kept me reading. I still rated the book 4 stars, so it got a really high rating. Maybe it also has to do with the fact that the ending was really heartbreaking, and I probably wish it had ended a different way. That's all I'll say about that. But I can't believe it took me so long to read them. I can't believe that the first time I read the Grisha trilogy, I took a break from the Grisha universe because I did not like it that much. And these have been sitting on my shelves for like that long, and this is the first time that I've read them. I don't know what I should do, punish myself for just leaving these. And the only reason that I picked them up was because we went on a family vacation with my boyfriend's family like a year ago. My boyfriend's sister was reading these books, and then I talked about how I wanted to read them, and she told me that I should because they were really good, and she was right. They were really good, so I'm glad that I read them. Six of Crows is probably my favorite book that I read in the month of February. Next up in February, this was also a reread. I'm pretty sure I read it. I didn't really remember, but I feel like I've read it, and it's so short. It's a collection of short stories called How the King of Elfheim Learned Tate Stories. It's a collection of short stories in the Folk of the Air universe, which is a little hint as to what I read next. I wonder if you can guess it. You probably can. This book was fine. I rated this book 3 stars. It was all right. It was a collection of short stories. It was nothing groundbreaking. I'm sure some people would argue that. Some people probably absolutely adored this book, but I thought it was fine. I actually liked it more than some of the other things that I've read in my time. It follows Prince Cardon, which if you know anything about Folk of the Air, you probably know who that is. So, and it's literally just a collection of short stories from him being a child all the way up until he meets Jude. So I am glad that I read it for a little bit of extra context surrounding Cardon, our character. It made me like him more when rereading this next trilogy that I read. I closed off the month by reading the first 2 books in the Folk of the Air trilogy, The Cruel Prince and The Wicked King. I rated this one 3 stars and I rated this one 2 stars. This is another reread. I read it around the same time that I read the original Grisha trilogy, and I think what sparked me to want to reread these was the fact that I reread the Grisha trilogy and I liked that one so much more. So I was like, I wonder what other things I would like 5 years later, now that I've grown and developed more as a person. Maybe I'll like these. I was wrong. I still didn't really like them. If anything, I feel like I was more nice with my ratings last time. I'm pretty sure that they were all 3 stars, would be my guess. But this time we have a 2 star. And that makes me very sad. Maybe this was the 2 star, because the element of the story that I liked was when Jude and Cardon were like actually in a relationship. I liked the enemies to lovers, mostly the lovers, which that happened a lot in The Wicked King, which is the second one. This book had like almost no romance. It was just, I don't know, I found this one very boring. So this must be the one that I gave 2 stars. I'm just a little bit confused. I don't really know what's going on right now. The writing style I think is just not for me. I didn't connect to it. Felt like a drag to get through. I'm glad that I reread them, so now I know that I never have to reread them again. Even in 5 more years, I probably will not like them. If anything, I'll like them less. And I'm not trying to be mean. These are really well-written books. I can't say that they're not. Obviously, I gave this one 3 stars, and I'll get to Queen of Nothing. I also gave that one 3 stars, so they're fine books. They just were not my favorite, and I don't know. Maybe I also did myself a little bit of disservice by reading them back to back to back, because by the end of the series, which was probably the book that I liked the most, I was just so done with the series that I wanted it to be over with. So I feel like that might have actually hindered my rating a little bit, but we'll never know now. So I personally would not recommend these, but oh, I haven't even mentioned what they're about. Okay, I'm so bad at this. Let me tell you what they're about in case you do want to read them. So basically, we follow our main character, Jude, and she was whisked away to Fairy, the land of Fairy, and Fae hate people in this universe. That's her and her 2 sisters, and they're raised by a Fae man and his wife, and our main character, Jude, really wants to be a member of the king's court, so she's working towards that, but it's really difficult because the youngest son of the king, of said king, goes to school with her, and he absolutely hates her guts and makes her life a living hell. So she has to figure out a way that she can become a member of the king's court, particularly a knight. She really wants to be a knight, but she's gonna have to defy Cardon in order to do that. There's a lot of politics, and I feel like politics have to be done a specific way in fantasy. Obviously politics are important. You can't just throw them out the window, but I feel like I don't want to be info dumped politics, and that's kind of what this feels like sometimes. So I'm sure that it would be a really great story for some people. It just personally was not for me, and that is okay. You win some and you lose some. You like some and you don't like some. Now we're getting into the month of March. In this month, I didn't read that much. I read 7 books. That is my worst month of the year. Is that the first book I read in March was The Queen of Nothing, which finishes off that trilogy. This one I definitely thought was my favorite. I loved the ending. I loved that it sort of had a happy ending, considering the fact that this does not seem like it would have a happy ending, the series. It's quite dark for YA and quite political for YA as well. As previously mentioned, I feel like the thing that hindered my enjoyment of this book was the fact that I read them all back to back. So by the time I got to this book, I was just so done. There was also a new release that I was really excited about in March, but I had other books that I wanted to reread before reading that book in March. So I just wanted to like be done, know that I didn't really like it that much, and move on. I feel like I'm talking so harshly about a book that I gave 3 stars. I liked this book. It was fine. There were parts that I enjoyed, such as the ending, the communication between Jude and Cardon. They have really good banter. They have, I don't know, I like their relationship. This isn't romantasy. So if you think that it's romantasy, it's not. And I didn't think it was romantasy, but I know that I like romance elements in my fantasy. So it's just not for me, and that's fine. It was still a good book, and I loved it. No, I didn't. Why did I say that? It was still a good book, and I enjoyed it. For the most part, until I wanted to be done with it. Now moving on to probably the most exciting portion of this video. So I reread the Hunger Games trilogy for about the, I don't know, 25th time. I don't even know how many times I've read this series in the last 13 years. Maybe not 25, maybe like 15. I don't know. I used to reread these books over and over again when I was a child. But I reread them again because, as you probably know, we had a new release in March, which I will get to that. Don't you worry. But I needed to reread all of Suzanne Collins' other books. Not all of her other books, because she has another series. All of her Hunger Games books in preparation, because I was so excited. Oh, I was so excited. I have a whole video where I talk about how excited I was, so I'm not going to do that too much here. But yeah, I reread the Hunger Games trilogy. I'm not going to describe what this is to you because you probably know what this is. But what I am going to do is say that I gave them all 5 stars. Again, this is the series that got me into reading. This is my first ever 5-star series. I can never decrease the rating of these books. My outlook on the things that happened is changing and evolving as I get older and I understand more about the nuances of the world. However, the feeling I get when I read these books has not changed. Every time I reread them, I get that feeling, and I love rereading them. And I'm probably going to reread them again when the new movie comes out. I just wanted to talk about the fact that I gave all of these 5 stars. And then I read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which was a book that came out in 2020. That was my most anticipated release of 2020. And it came out in May, which was my birth month, which is very exciting. Nobody cares. Moving on. I gave this book 4 stars. This book has fluctuated so much because part of me felt compelled to give it 5 stars just because I love the Hunger Games, and any element of the Hunger Games that Suzanne Collins can give us, any knowledge, I will eat that shit up. I get so excited about any new Hunger Games media at all. I felt obligated to give this 5 stars just because it feels so important to the story, and now that we know this information, I can't unsee this information. Like, this is canon. It is canon. This isn't, I'm not making that up. She wrote it, so it's canon. Anyway, I'm being weird. I don't really know what I'm trying to say here. I gave it 4 stars. I've read this book like 4 times now. When it first came out, don't know if I don't even remember my rating. I feel like it was not 5 stars, and I felt bad about the fact that I didn't give it 5 stars. So now I don't even remember that rating because I just blocked it out because I felt bad about it. And then at some point it was like 4 stars. And then when the movie came out, I reread it and I gave it 5 stars just because I was imagining the movie play out in my head, and that made it so enjoyable because I felt like I couldn't imagine the things happening. They just seemed so outlandish that when I actually saw it on screen, if that makes sense, it made me enjoy it more. But I don't know. And then rereading it again, I think I've settled on the fact that this is very much a 4-star book. It's really good, it's really important, it has a lot of pertinent information. I think it was just a lot longer and written in a different format than I'm used to, and I think that that just takes some points away. 4-star book. I'm gonna be so annoyed editing this video. I can already tell that I'm being really hyperactive. Maybe I didn't need the caffeine. Anyway, yeah, read this book. If you didn't know, it's a President Snow origin story. It takes place during the 10th Hunger Games, so yeah. Okay, the next book that I read was my favorite book that I've read so far this year, and the book that I was most excited for to be released this year, and that is Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because I have like a video that is going to be an hour long or something that I'm currently in the process of editing that will 100% be posted. It cannot not be posted because I'm so just excited about that video. I don't know when it'll be out. Probably in about a week. Don't hold me to that, but I loved this book. 5 stars if you can't tell. This was Haymitch's story, which, do I really need to say it again? I feel like every time I sit down in front of the camera lately, I'm like, I've been wanting this since I was 9. But seriously, I've been wanting this since I was 9, and now we have it. So how could I give it any less than 5 stars? I would be so disappointed in myself. And this time I'm not trying to convince myself. I genuinely bawled my eyes out and cannot stop thinking about this book. I'm like back to 9-year-old me, but in modern times. I say modern as if 2012 is not modern, but like looking at edits and stuff, joining Facebook groups and Reddit threads. I don't know who I am, but this book has consumed me. And I'm so happy that it exists, and I'm so happy that I read it and I gave it 5 stars. And it actually, I gave this book 6 stars. This is a 6-star book. That doesn't happen very often, but this is one of them, if such a thing were to exist. And now I felt like I needed a little bit of a break after reading Sunrise on the Reaping because that was my most anticipated and my most favorite. I felt like I needed a break. I could not jump back into like a full-length novel. I needed to just like chill and listen to some audiobooks and do other relaxing things. So I read some nonfiction, which is not something that I do very often. I read 2 nonfiction audiobooks this year, or this month. And the first one was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, which I'm sure a lot of people have heard about. I had it downloaded, listened to the first few chapters, and then just got bored with it or whatever, because I have a hard time not when I don't have the physical copy, because a lot of the times what I do with Audible is I'll listen to the audiobook while I follow along in the physical book. It just helps keep me focused. But I didn't have the physical book, so it was only the audiobook. And how often am I doing something where I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna put an audiobook on in the background? Normally I'm watching TV or I'm watching YouTube videos or something. But at my lunch break, I listened to 2 audiobooks. The first one being I'm Glad My Mom Died, which took 3 days because I get an hour of breaks at work, and the audiobook was 3 hours listening on 2.4 speed or something. I listen to audiobooks really fast. Powered through that. And if you don't know, that is an autobiography by Jeanette McCurdy, as I previously mentioned, just sort of talking about her life as a child actress and her abusive mom. I really enjoyed the book. I thought that it was really well done. It was very upsetting, but I mean, that was kind of the point. Like, it wasn't like she was telling a happy story. The book's called I'm Glad My Mom Died. I will say that if you are someone who is sensitive to eating disorders, maybe don't read the book, because lots of detail woven throughout the book about that. And I did not give that a star rating because I just feel like it's weird to, I know I'm not the only person that has said this, so I know I'm not weird for this, but I find it weird to rate somebody's personal life on a scale of 1 to 5. Just like, hey, this is in detail my personal life and the abuse I went through. And then I just go and I'm like, 2 stars. It was kind of boring. You know what I mean? I didn't enjoy it, but I did enjoy it, if that makes sense. Horrible what she went through, but it was extremely well written, and I'm very happy that she's in a better place now. And then the second nonfiction book that I read was The House of My Mother by Sherry Frankie, which was another one that battled a really hard topic of like family vloggers and abuse. This is another sort of autobiography, but not only an autobiography, like if there's such a thing as like a family biography, because she also tells the story about her mom and her dad and her siblings, sort of vaguely. It's mostly her, so I'll just say autobiography. But basically she talks about the abuse that she suffered at the hands of her mother. Not physical abuse, really, mostly emotional abuse until sort of the end, which I'm sure you know about Ruby Frankie, the family vlogger who has been arrested for what she ended up doing to her kids. I'm not going to go into detail on that. If you don't know about it somehow, which you probably do, but if you don't, you can Google it, figure it out yourself. I just am not well enough researched on what actually happened, and that is not a prevalent part of the book because I think she just wants to keep it a little, like, as much privacy as she can have, considering the fact that all of her privacy is pretty much being stripped away from the second that her mom picked up that camera. So I'm not going to go into immense detail regarding what happened. If you're curious, go ahead, but you probably know. But yeah, she talks about sort of things that were going on behind the scenes, the things that led up to her mom's arrest, and talks about why family vlogging is bad. And again, I did not give this one a rating, but it was really enjoyable. I cried, but not like good crying. It was not enjoyable, but it was well done. I'm very glad that I read those books. But anyway, now that is all of the books that I read in February and March. They're all out there. You know about them now. So I'm going to, well, first of all, I didn't talk about statistics. My average rating for the month of February was 3.4 stars, and I read 8 fantasy and 1 general fiction. So it was, you can kind of tell that I was in more of a fantasy mood that month. Now, it's gonna sound really weird saying this, but my average rating for the month of March was 4.5 stars. Now, first of all, that's not accurate because out of 8 books that I read, maybe I would have been telling people that I read 7. I read 8 books in March. Cool. Out of the 8 books that I read, 2 of them are nonfiction. So like I said, I don't typically rate nonfiction and autobiographies and stuff like that. So that is just not part of that statistic. And then 5 of those books were rereads. No, not 5. 4, no, 5 of them were rereads, because if you count The Queen of Nothing, that was a reread. That was a reread that I didn't really like as much. It was only 3 stars. 4 of the books were the Hunger Games books, that 3 of them I knew were gonna be 5 stars because they're 5 stars every time I read them, so it doesn't really count as like a new 5-star. I read Sunrise on the Reaping, and that one definitely counts because that was new, and there was a chance, well, I don't know if there's a chance that I wouldn't like that book, but like I guess there's a possibility that I wouldn't have liked the book. The month of March, I read 1 fantasy, 5 dystopian, if you separate that from fantasy, because it's different, and 2 nonfiction, so kind of like a weird couple of months, but overall I'm happy with what I read, particularly in the month of March. Even though it was mostly rereads in the month of March and nonfiction, I was just happier in March, and I'm hoping April will be even better. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. That felt weird saying that. I never say that. You're supposed to. It's beneficial if you do it. So I don't know, if you feel like doing those things, go ahead and do them. Thank you. But if not, that's fine. Like I said, stay tuned for that Hunger Games reading, not Hunger Games reading vlog, but Sunrise on the Reaping reading vlog that's coming out. But anyway, I don't really have anything else to say, so thank you so much for being here and watching this video, and I will see you in my next one, hopefully, maybe. Yeah, bye.